In the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv this morning, residents were rocked after another round of Russian strikes. Some of the blasts were heard before air raid sirens rang out around the city. NBC's Matt Bradley is on the ground there. So, Matt, what are officials saying about this latest attack?
Yeah, well, Lindsay, this country actually endured not one, but two nationwide volleys of Russian missiles all day today, starting in the morning, as you mentioned, and going into the afternoon. Now, you mentioned Kyiv. A lot of those airstrikes were focused on the capital, but the real tragedy we saw today was in the central city of Dnipro. That's where a Russian missile slammed into a multi-story residential building, killing 5, according to the Ukrainians, and wounding nearly 60, including about a dozen children. Now, our understanding is that there are still people trapped in that immense wreckage, and authorities are racing to try to pull them out, trying to get to them alive. But this is an ongoing tragedy, and one that we've seen kind of unspooling across the country. You mentioned Kyiv, how those residents were woken up. That's unusual to hear the sounds of missiles slamming into the city before you hear the air raid siren. I've been in Kyiv for months now. Normally, you hear the air raid siren first, and we heard from the Ukrainian Air Force. They said that might be because the Russians have been using ballistic missiles, which are harder to detect and harder to intercept. And that's why they made impact before there was the air raid siren. But in that second volley in the afternoon, we heard from the Ukrainians, and this is the nationwide statistic. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that of the 38 projectiles that were launched by Russia, 25 of them were intercepted, which is about on par with the rate of interception that we've been seeing by the Ukrainians for the past several months, ever since this style of long-range attacks striking far beyond the front line began during the fall. But, also we heard some really important news today, and that was UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak became the first Western leader to promise battle tanks for Ukraine. Now, a lot of it looks like, the West has been giving something like tanks. They've been giving fighting vehicles, and the United States has given Bradley fighting vehicles. We've gotten Marder fighting vehicles from Germany. But these are not really tanks. They look like tanks, and sometimes they act like tanks, but they're actually more like highly armored, highly weaponized personnel carriers for infantry. The Ukrainians have been begging for tanks ever since this war began, but for Washington, providing tanks has always been a bridge too far, because they believe that the tanks or other really heavy weaponry, even though they've gone with Patriot missiles and other long-range systems, they believe that that could be an escalation on the battlefield that could provoke Russia to do even more damage to this country or even further afield in Europe or towards the U.S. But now we're starting to see with Britain that attitude kind of slipping away, and it seems like it won't be long until we see Germany follow suit with their Leopard 2 tanks, which are highly desirable for Ukraine, or even Washington providing M1 Abrams tanks. But it's not clear that Ukraine actually wants Washington's Abrams tanks, because they take a lot more to maintain and they run on kerosene, which is harder to get here in Ukraine. Lindsay?
All right, Matt Bradley, thank you for joining us with those updates.